Hello, it's Jennifer McGuire, and thanks for stopping by. Today I'm going to use some paints or some inks to create a splatter background. I think that splatter background works great as kind of like a galaxy behind these stars and the moon, and it's really easy to create. So what I'm going to do is start out with some white cardstock, and I'm going to use some painter's tape and tape this onto my work surface. I originally covered all four sides because I was going to leave a white trim around it, but I ended up cutting it out. But that's why I put all that down. Now I decided for this I'm going to use the Hero Arts Hero Arts daubers. Now this dauber is the neon blue, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to it to water it down so that it's easier to create the splatter effect. Now you could use any kind of ink or paint for this. You could use watercolors, you could use acrylic paint with some water added to it. You could just smush your ink pads onto your craft sheet and then add some water. You could use anything you want, even watercolors. I decided to move this onto my cutting board because I like to pick up my project and heat it and move it around when I'm working with water. It's just something that I use, but you could keep it on your work surface. Now I was sure to heat set all those splatters before I moved on to my next color. The reason I do that is then I don't get any funky bleeding between the two different colors. I just like the clean splatter look. Next up is the Tide Pool color. This is a great kind of teal color. I added some water to it and I'm flicking it onto my paper also. Now I'm tapping the brush from above, but you could also tap it from below. Whatever works best for you, I encourage you to try different things. But this really doesn't make that much of a mess. If you're working on a craft sheet, it's really easy to clean up. So now that I heat set that color, I'm going to move on to grape juice. This one's going to be a lot darker than the others. If I wanted to, I could add even more water to make it a softer purple, but I really kind of like the dark. It's a nice contrast to the colors we already have. So I'm going to apply as much as I can to cover this area. Now after I did this, I decided I wanted the background to not be white. I wanted a blue background. I don't know. So after all this was dry, I heat set it. I'm going in with my ink blending tool and my Distress ink and Salty Ocean and adding a blue color to the background. Now I added more ink around the edges than I did in the center so that I ended up with like a glow look in the center. But that blends so easily with that ink blending tool, so I get a nice blue background. Now that we have a lot of color in the background, I thought it'd be fun to splatter some soft colors on top. So this is the Hero Arts Pastel Blue Dauber. I'm going to flick some of this on. When it dries, it almost gives a gray tone because it's the pastel blue. I'm going to heat set this. You'll see the colors, the close-up of the splatter in just a moment. But I also wanted to add my favorite of the Hero Arts daubers, the white. I'm not actually adding any water to this, so you got to flick extra hard to get this to come off. But I wanted some white splatters in the background. I just thought that'd be fun when it dries on top of all of that color. So I got to use a little more force to get this to come off the brush, but you see that you end up with some great splatter using the white daubers. So now I'm going to peel this off. I didn't really press my tape down really well around the edges, so some of that color kind of bled underneath, but I could scratch that off with a craft knife if I wanted to. Now here's a close-up look at what that splatter looks like. You can see the white in there, you can see all the different colors that we did, you can even see the pastel blue. Lots of depth to this, and I really think it doesn't take long and it's easy to do, and you can use anything that you have on hand. Now I trimmed this down and I wanted to give it an even more defined edge. So I'm going in with my blue ink and rubbing it around the edges. And look at that great like galaxy look you get in the background. I think it'd be fun to use greens and create kind of a field with some flowers on front of it too. So now I wanted to show you how I created the silver elements. This is just some glitter paper from Die Cuts with a View. And this is a new background die from Hero Arts. I love this background die, but I'm only going to use the stars from it. I'm going to save this other piece for another card. I thought it'd be fun along the edge of a card, but I'm only going to use those stars. Now I created my own moon. This was so easy. I first punched with a 1 3/4 inch circle punch, and now I'm taking that paper and putting it back into a 2 1/2 inch circle punch and punching it again, and there we have a moon. And that was inspired by the moon and that stamp set that we're about to use too. So easy, and you can use any 2 size circle punches to create that. So now I want to put this all together, so I'm going to glue this onto a Hero Arts white note card, just putting some adhesive on the back of this. And I have my greeting picked out from this new stamp set from Hero Arts. I just love the greetings in this stamp set. It's just fantastic. Stamp it with black ink on the bottom of a white cardstock piece. So I know that I have it nice and centered. I'm going to grab my trimmer and then cut off the extra, and this way I can be sure my greeting is centered up and down on the strip. Now I'm just going to trim this down. I know I want to have this kind of tucked behind the moon and then ending on the edge of the paper that we created. So I trimmed that down, and now it's time to glue all this down. I'm going to use some foam tape on the back of my little moon here and also on the back of the greeting strip so they pop up from the background that we created. Now for my stars, I'm going to cut up tiny pieces of foam tape and put them on the back of the stars and scatter them along my card. Now for the super tiny stars, I'm just going to add those with a dot of glossy accents and just put them flat onto the card, and I can be sure those won't come off at all. When working with tiny little die cuts like this, I like to use my quick sticks because it's got a sticky end that I can pick it up and put it onto my project with. It just makes working with these little guys so much easier. I ended up with a lot of extra stars, so I do what I always do, and I put some on the inside of the card to pull it all together. 3 little dots of glossy accents is all it takes. I really like this glitter paper because it's not too shiny, it's really subtle, really fine, and it doesn't rub off one bit. So it's great to use on projects like this, and it easily punches and die cuts. So there's a fun and easy way to create a unique background by splattering any kinds of inks or paints that you may have. If you're interested in any of these products, they're linked below in my YouTube description. If you head over to my blog, I have links there and so much more information, so please do so, and I hope you'll stop back for another video. Thanks so much for watching.